So I am open to, so this is a charity, and in order to maintain this charity, I want to also branch out and get more of my local community involved. What has been hard and I was not able to do because when I started the critique group, which had turned into the Inclusive Romance Project, it was right on the cusp of the pandemic. So I couldn't really do any boots on the ground doing outreach to um, high schools and colleges and make connections with creative writing professors in like the schools around in the Austin and Hill Country area to get them into like, I feel like romance authors and writers are kind of like they're in their spaces and they're doing their thing. Um, Sometimes they might not want to share it. Sometimes, because that stigma on the romance writing and romance genre is real, yo. And I want to bring them in. I remember writing alone like that when I was in high school, and I had a handful of friends who loved reading my like the juicy bits that I write, um, but it still was a lonely thing, and I wanted to meet other writers at that time who wrote romance and enjoyed writing it as much as they enjoyed reading it, and I did not have that luck. But I want to be able to serve my local community in that fashion as well, and trying to get them to virtually come on board. So, what makes us different? I would say it is when I created this group, um, inclusion was a really big part of it. It's the foundation of it. Um, and the way that I wanted to keep the my finger on it, to so to speak, is to do something that I tell lots of corporations and businesses to do, which is you need to start getting your employee sentiment and understand how do they feel. You need to give them a platform for them to be able to share at their level of comfort whether or not they feel like they belong at the group that they're in, that they feel welcomed, that they feel like their opinions are being heard and they're being solicited, like people want to hear from them. Um, and then they feel comfortable collaborating with others, and then learning. Um, and that should go for any organization, whether it is nonprofit, for profit, corporation, whatever. You should be able to gauge that in some form or fashion, just so you can see where you are. So I did that. I wanted to, and every year we're going to do it is do a belonging and inclusion and belonging survey that I reach out to the membership, have them anonymously answer, like, basically, how do you feel about leadership in supporting your endeavors in the community? How are the resources? Do you feel like you are welcome? Do you feel like you belong? Do you feel like you can have a dissenting uh, agreement or disagreement, or the dissenting comment, so to speak, sorry, and feel like you are not going to be attacked? Those kind of things. I wanted to see how people felt about being belong. Um, so that is what I want to continue to do, is to continue to gauge that. And when I start seeing numbers drop, then it's time to investigate and figure out why and how we can do better. I think another thing that makes it different, uh, Inclusive Romance Project different, is that I wanted to own it. It was mine, and um, this is gonna sound a little funky, but is sometimes the only way you're gonna word it is how to word it. I want it to be the one to set the tone and call the shots without feeling I had to answer to some other group or something to tell me what isn't or isn't acceptable. I made it very clear in the community of how everyone should behave. Everyone has a code of conduct that they agree to know what the expected behavior is and what is not expected behavior, what is unacceptable. And you make that very clear from the get-go. And I have the right to moderate and look at anyone who is causing any harm consistently in the group that is not welcome and not part of the behavior that we all agreed upon, to give them das Boot. And that's the way I wanted it, because I know I've been in so many situations throughout my career and my life where there's someone that wants to do the right thing, but they're being prevented, they're being roadblocked from having to do it because you have all these other leaps and hurdles to go through. And then sometimes you get there, then the higher group is kind of like, nah, well, let's just not do that, or blah, blah, blah. I didn't want that. I didn't want any of that. I wanted to say, look, I know what this looks like. I know what kind of behavior that we're wanting to get away from. So if I see that behavior in here, you're getting kicked out. And that's also kind of the beauty why I like to keep the organization free, because I don't have to deal with all the overhead of people feeling like they're not getting what they bought for, paid for with this, and they're being kicked out without any kind of refund. I didn't want any of that mess. I think at the time that I built this group, a lot of us were just very exhausted. I was exhausted. A lot of people who had came over here were exhausted of dealing with racism, dealing with bigotry, dealing with people who are just being very nice about their racism. I don't know what kind of tactic that is, but it's disturbing. There had to have been some kind of breaking ground, and most of us that came over and we're just not having it. I know when I was going to build this group, I wasn't having it. So yeah, I think that kind of what makes us different is, unfortunately, I am the absolute power of this group at this point, and I want to protect it, and I want to protect the people that's in it. Another misconception is, I think when people think of inclusion, they think, well, everyone is accepted. Here's the deal. It's not. So, being very candid here, we're crossing over into some troubled waters that I'm very happy to sail. So, when we think about inclusion, it is tied to equity. And when we think of that, we're thinking about the people who are never in the room, either never in the room, or when they're in the room, we don't even pay attention to them. They're just there for decoration. Tokens. And so when we're thinking about inclusion and equity, we're thinking about creating an equitable space where those people who are not in the room to be brought in, and not only being brought in, but we're elevating them so we can hear their voices and hear their opinions just like we do everyone else. So when we think about that, we also have to think about, our rights to exist, our liberties, and our pursuit of happiness. And the historical fact that these disparities that happen occur greatly with the marginalized identities, like these people who belong to these historically marginalized groups. I'm aiming to make a safe place for them. The majority, you have tons of spaces, and you are welcome here. Just have to understand that this space is primarily for their success and for them to thrive. If you want to be part of that elevation and that success, come along. We'd love to have you. But I think that part is hard for people to understand, and sometimes they don't necessarily get it. Or sometimes I could see how some people will feel like, oh, you're giving them like there's special treatment involved. Like, I can't get into all of that right now, but I will say when you are talking about equity, you are taking the folks who have just been behind because there has been historical, systemic oppression based on who they are, bringing them up to where everyone has the same finish line. That is what we're trying to do. So if that looks like you are being excluded, you might have to ask yourself, are you being an oppressor? Are you the ones that are actively not wanting these individuals and these communities to get the same kind of level of attention and support and resources as you do? And I'm not trying to flip it on people, but I also got to say is, if you are an individual, we welcome all individuals who respect everyone's right to exist and be themselves. If you are a person who are coming in trying to oppress another and being bigoted and being racist and being a bully, you do not belong in this group. You do not deserve that inclusion because you are creating a hostile, harmful environment for everyone else. And that I cannot abide. All right. Take it easy, folks.